Well, thank you for your time, Liam. The purpose of, I guess, jumping on this call and having a video was to explore one of the less talked about topics that as I was writing the latest security blog for our client base, I stumbled across the security implications of the Internet of Things. And apart from the fact that that sounds like a mystical word of the galaxy out there, it piqued my interest and something that potentially our clients and our community don't know a lot about. So I wanted just to jump on a quick call, a bit like we did. We got some great feedback on the last one and choose a fat. And maybe we could start with, what is the Internet of Things?
Cool. I'm going to use the talking marks more often than I would ever like to in today's questions, so I apologise. But Kevin Ashton, a serial entrepreneur back in the late 90s, coined the phrase Internet of Things, and it was designed to highlight the outlandish nature of things could connect via the internet to other things and communicate with each other, not just the people. So the phrase is meant to conjure up images of all kinds of devices and things being connected. By definition, the internet that we know today is the Internet of Things. There is no other special internet that things use. There is just the internet. And Internet of Things is designed to just highlight this concept that things can communicate with other things via the internet.
And so when someone talks about the security implications of the Internet of Things, what are some examples of things that would fall into that category?
Sure. Well, probably before diving into the security aspect, it's potentially more tangible to highlight what things make up the Internet of Things. So just to make it real for people, it's your home security, your fridge, your smartwatch, your smoke detectors, drawbridges that detect boats coming and automatically open but feed information back, the Bureau of Meteorology's weather gauge out in a field. The list goes on. Anything that autonomously feeds data into or draws data from the internet is a good candidate for a thing that lives on the Internet of Things. So if you extend that out, then what makes it dangerous is in fact the autonomy. If someone hacks into your computer while you're using it and you see your mouse moving around, you're like, oh, something is wrong, or your disk starts filling up, or you get all of these bounce messages back into your inbox because someone's using your email to send spam. I mean, these are pretty old-fashioned attacks, but you could see it happening. It was real. If someone logs into your smart camera at home or in your office, how do you know? If they're using either your credentials or an exploit that's available in the camera software, no alarm goes off. There is no abnormal behavior. Or maybe you've got an aging parent with a medical system that takes their blood pressure automatically every day. If they've breached that and they're gathering that data again, you wouldn't know. There's no call or alarm that goes off. Bringing it into the workspace, you might have a CNC machine that's cutting out pieces to go into a shop fit out, or a conveyor belt that monitors when there's not space on the line and it needs to check for capacity, or a labeling machine that needs to alert to say I'm running low on ink or labels via the internet. These machines, there's nothing to give away. They don't perform abnormally if they've been compromised. That's what's scary about them. And then the kind of data that feeds out, on the face of it, you go, oh, I don't care if someone knows that I need to order labels. No, that probably doesn't matter. But if you get a call from a service technician saying your labeling machine is low on labels, you're inclined to believe them, especially if they call when your machine is low on labels and they say, there's an exploit, there's a vulnerability right now, we need remote access to urgently patch that for you. You are 10 times more likely to let that person in because it sounds right. They've called from the right company, they've called at a time that makes sense, and they're operating off data that they stole. They may not be that service company, but how would you know? And so in that regard, the kind of information that you can lift from the Internet of Things, think about medical data. If you get a phone call about your parents' medical records, you'd be inclined to hand it over because we can see we've just got an alert from the latest results. Or maybe they know your child's name and they call and speak, I'm a friend of Johnny, and I'd love to speak to Johnny, please. If they've got a home security camera, they can pick up on the audio and they know all of that information. So on the face of it, these things seem innocuous, but if you apply the malicious attacker mindset, what could you do if you had all of these little bits of information? How could you string that together to make a really plausible story?
That's wild. So, how on earth are you meant to stay safe and operate in a best practice model as a business owner or as someone operating within a business with something as amorphous as the Internet of Things?
Yeah, it is a tricky one, and it is scary to think how much is not being used. Um, or not being thought about or considered. Often the devices are just installed and ignored, and for years at a time. You don't do an update, you don't review the permissions, you don't improve your password. 5 years ago, what was considered a good password isn't now. But 5 years ago might have been when you put those smoke detectors into the office that, or out into the factory that alerts, etc. So standard rules apply here. Use MFA on any Internet of Things account. Anything that you can put MFA on, put MFA on it. It's the best defense we have. And so in terms of protecting the account itself, the same. Use a strong password. Long is strong. So a strong password doesn't need to be hard for you to remember. It needs to be hard for an attacker to breach. And so that means number of characters, 15 or 20 characters is great, especially when you don't have MFA. Those are good for protecting the account that might give access to the Internet of Things thing. But how about protecting it from a vulnerability or it from a breach? They need to be updated and patched. So these things need to form some kind of you need to have a regular maintenance schedule for keeping that stuff up to date. So know what IoT stuff you have, make a list, check on it regularly, make sure that someone is evaluating, do we still need this thing? Does it actually need access to the internet to perform its job? Who is responsible to make sure that we're up to date? Not so that we're getting the latest features, although that's maybe good, but so that we're protected against the vulnerabilities that have been discovered in our whiz-bang printer that makes coffee and can dance on the weekends device. I also want to make sure that it's not the entry point for a simple attack that might have come through. And of course, phishing is still phishing. If someone reaches out to you asking for information or asking to get engaged and you didn't request that, stop, think, is this real? Have them validate who they are. Call them back. Say, no worries, I'm just going to call you back at the office. And that's a great way of dismissing a lot of these things. So tackle any of those phishing inputs like you would normally. Also, in the workplace, monitor network activity. Having an antivirus agent on a workstation is a great way to know if that workstation is doing something sus. But if you've got a network switch or an Internet of Things thing that's been compromised, most of those devices can't run AV or can't run it effectively. But what they do on the network still looks suspicious. They're doing things that are unusual. They're accessing things they shouldn't be. Monitor the network traffic and have someone flagging if that network traffic looks inappropriate or unusual or different, so it can be evaluated and you can identify if something is out of the ordinary.
So, how are we doing that for our customers at the moment in terms of monitoring their networks?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It is a combination of things because most people are running a distributed workplace environment now. Protecting the office network is in many ways easier than protecting the new workplace. A comprehensive security firewall will have network monitoring built in, and it will monitor anything that's going from the local network out to the world. And so if that device is checking in with a malicious endpoint or reporting home, calling home, that traffic can be caught and blocked. And that's certainly something that we would do and recommend. Other devices on the network can be monitoring their network ports, but we can also put in a specialized network device that's aimed at monitoring and filtering network traffic and reporting. That really needs to be tuned to actually meet the need of the environment, as opposed to just everyone get one of these, because it may not actually provide you the protection you need. An example of the work from home world, most people are running the free modem that they got from Telstra or Optus or whoever when their NBN connection went in. They've probably never updated it. They probably haven't changed the password that it came with. That's a real risk. If that modem is compromised and they're also running, maybe they work on a BYOD from home and you don't control the updates of that workstation, then that would be a problem for you to be concerned about. So because you can't at home put network monitoring in all of these devices, your devices that are out and about in homes, in libraries, in coffee shops, make sure they're fully patched, make sure they're running current antivirus and endpoint detection and response software, make sure that that's being monitored and reviewed, ideally by a SOC, so that if the device goes into an unsafe environment, it is still protected, even though you can't protect everyone everywhere all the time by controlling everything that they connect to.
And shameless plug, but our managed security product does offer the EDR and the SOC kind of components that you were touching on there, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Look,
as any,
okay.
I think any security offering should definitely be including those building blocks.
Yeah, definitely. And if you're watching this video and you're going, okay, what are we doing specifically for our organization and what does that look like and how could we improve? That's a conversation that we'd welcome in any of your regular kind of IT health conversations with Liam or with Nathan. They're a great point of contact on that front. So thank you for watching. If you got to the end, I hope you found it as educational as I did when I was unpacking the Internet of Things. And we look forward to touching base with you next time. Thanks, Liam.